"You're going to Penn State? Why?" I said, "It's for the challenge." Oh, I could never do that. You're going to be in the hearing world. There will be no deaf people, no sign language. How do you plan on communicating? It was interesting. They were so scared. All their lives they grew up in residential schools where places they could sign. I'm learning how to test myself, how to challenge myself in the hearing world. I can make new friends and help assist, my other deaf friends. It's going to be a good thing. First day at Penn State, I came out of my bedroom and I realized that this place is not a deaf community. It's really a hearing residential school. It's in a rural area, very urban. Most of the people had no clue about deafness, deaf culture, anything. So I knew I had to be patient and have a positive attitude. And the one thing I'm used to is having a pencil and a pad of paper. These have always worked for me before for communication. I look like a nerd, but it's okay. It's okay by me. It's important that I have these. So I walk around the campus, and there's not one person signing. Everybody's carrying their books, walking by, chattering. So I'm looking at a map. I feel like it was my first time in survival camp. So I stopped a person, and he looked at me kind of weird, and that threw me off. And I wrote down, "Where's the registration building?" And he starts pointing, chattering along. I was trying to figure out where the place was. There were mistakes. There were many frustrations. But I remembered to chuck something else out of my vocabulary. Withdraw. I knew I could withdraw. I knew I could fill out the form for withdrawal, but I didn't know how to find the form for that, which was lucky. So I didn't want that go-to that I could withdraw if I needed to. And then I knew I could survive. About a year, all the students were everyone was just scared. How's this deaf person functioning in this graduate program? And I knew it. That's what I expected. Don't worry. I'm not going to let that, affect me. My handicap is not all who I am. My ability should overshadow my handicap. My creativity, my personality, it would make them feel good, and they'd feel comfortable interacting with me. I know a lot of deaf people complain about communication problems in the hearing world, but we can't change the world. You can't change the laws. It's important to find your way. You have to avoid problems and think positively about the way you want to go, how you plan to cope with different things. I think it's important for deaf children to realize that there are other deaf people in the community, and it's important for them to take deaf studies and learn the history of deaf people who were famous or successful. Then they'll feel inspired about these people and realize that they can be successful too. They're looking up to these role models. Because when I grew up, I was spending time, I was asleep. I was definitely not awake. I didn't even realize. And by the time I went to school, that's when I woke up. I thought, why couldn't I wake up when I was a young boy? Wow. So one year I was in the master's program, and then I left and went back to teach theater at RIT. I was teaching there, but I didn't think it was right for me. I knew I could. Taught there for 3 years, but my heart was really in fine arts. I decided to go back to Penn State. I met with my advisor. We were sitting there chatting, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I explained my dreams, that I wanted to help more deaf people appreciate art. I wanted to do more research about deaf history, more analysis about deaf artists' work. And my advisor said, "Why don't you go into the PhD program?" And I said, "What?" And he said, I said, I never thought about that, going to the PhD program. And the advisor said, "You could teach hearing kids here at Penn State." And I said, "Oh, what?" And then I remembered a book and an article I read of my favorite writer, Doug Tilden. He taught hearing students. I thought, I can do that. I can do that. He couldn't talk. He wrote back and forth and gestured. I can do that. That's perfect. I'm going to apply to the PhD program. They accepted me, and I said so long to the theater world. And by that time, it was good that I knew I could teach, but now I was going to focus on art. So I went into the PhD program at Penn State, and I had more confidence this time because I'd already spent 1 year there in the master's program. I felt good. I visited some of my old teachers, but now I was ready for some hard work and roll up my sleeves. I have to let you know that before you go into a program like that, you have to have a lot of enthusiasm and strength. If you don't have both, you won't survive in the program. It doesn't matter if you're deaf, hearing, blind, handicapped, crippled, maimed. It doesn't matter. You have to have power and enthusiasm. And I remember Penn State University didn't have so-called support services. Didn't have an interpreter for program for the deaf. So I had to post an ad in the college newspaper looking for an interpreter. So there are a few PhD students that had experience with interpreters, so I asked them for some advice. So I met with these applicants, and we had to figure out times when our schedules would match. And there were 3 or 4, they didn't have an art background at all, so we had to figure out the vocabulary and signs for the art we met. It was very interesting for me. A lot of the stuff I did was independent study, one-on-one, writing back and forth. And some of the students learned a little sign. At that time, I was interested in starting teaching in the classroom. I'll never forget the first day of class. I went in, I was the only person there, and I wrote on the board my name, Paul Johnston, big letters, and the name of the course. I sat there, and the students started coming in. They filled up the seats. Whew. It was nerve-wracking. I was so nervous. Never taught hearing students. Where's my interpreter? I was waiting on my interpreter. I've always depended on an interpreter. But I decided, okay, we're just going to go ahead. So I stood up and I drew a face on the board of a guy with his tongue sticking out and looking sick. And these students were cracking up, and they thought, oh my gosh, this guy is drawing a picture of the teacher. And then they realized that I was the teacher, and they couldn't believe it. They all freaked out. They thought they were in a dream meeting their teacher, and I said, no, that's me. So I handed out the syllabus and the objectives of the course. I said, if you're not comfortable for the course, you can drop it. And I was hoping that it would go down from 40. That would be better. 2 days later,